Before I get on to Philo71 and the problem of evil, I'd like to just touch on Matt Slick and his video on atheism and morality that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Basically, he finishes his video by saying, who would you rather meet in a natural disaster such as Hurricane Katrina? An atheist who believes that morals are relative, or a Christian who believes that stealing is absolutely wrong? And to that I have a stock answer. Why be good when you can just be forgiven?
Yeah, right. Why not use that Christian and then cast him aside? No,
I think once again Matt's making a gross oversimplification anyway, because just because somebody's atheist doesn't mean that they necessarily adhere to relativistic morals.
Old canard that atheists don't have morals.
And,
blah, blah, blah.
And also, his position is it's extremely short-sighted. It's asking who you'd rather meet, and not what position you would prefer to be in. If after Katrina, my family's starving, the infrastructure is falling apart, I cannot go to a grocery store and buy the food that I would normally have bought, but I can go in and actually take the food to feed my family and perhaps voluntarily leave money in the bin or not. I think it is incredibly myopic to not see that every situation is unique, and that if you're going to try and simplify morals to some kind of cookie cutter bumper sticker, black and white, this is the case always, you're just a tool. You're an idiot.
Mm-hmm. But that's what Matt Slick does for a living, right? Is he creates these little caricatures, he makes money at it, and that's how he does it. So yeah, it's frustrating.
Yep.
So because it's like this age-old thing that a lie goes halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. That sort of thing. It's kind of like that because the reality is much more complex than this little bumper sticker thing that he's got, right? And so to respond to it doesn't lend itself to little soundbite TV or bumper stickers, as you say. It doesn't lend itself to that. And
yeah, not only that, I'd rather not be a hypocrite. I think if you went and questioned people who looted after Katrina, I'm pretty sure they weren't all atheists. Which means the rest of them, according to Matt Slick, are hypocrites. Is he saying he'd rather let his family die?
They're not true Christians, man.
I'm curious as to whether or not Slick is implying that it is more moral for him to let his family starve than to steal something. I think he can say that all day long. I don't think he could actually live up to it. And if he could, he's an immoral dick.
Yep.
Anyway, you had something on the problem of evil, I think?
Thanks. Yeah, I sent you a debate with Philo71. I sent 2 files because I didn't know if you could read the files in the new Microsoft Word. And basically, the position that Philos takes is the one that St. Augustine did, which is basically God judged it better to bring good out of evil than to suffer no evil to exist. And they can't even... These funnies can't even see the contradiction, the oxymoron in the phrase suffer no evil. One of the examples he brought forward was how there could be someone 100 times worse than Hitler, but allowing him to live would bring massive amounts of good, such as the diary of Anne Frank. And I'll say this now, I would rather have Anne Frank alive in the world today than be inspired by her diary. And here's another soundbite. Quarks of good do not justify galaxies of suffering. And if the fundy asks what a quark is, ask him to look behind an electron.
The whole issue with the problem of evil that seems to escape a number of theists and apologists they start talking about, well, you couldn't have no suffering, you couldn't have no evil. Well, first of all, we got to be really careful when we start labeling things good, evil, whatever.
Yeah, evil is a dangerous word.
But it's I agree. You would be. I'm fine with the fact that eventually I'm going to die, and that to me adds meaning to my life. I also can appreciate the fact that I can burn myself, or I can feel really good, and that I can contrast these things. Yes, you're going to need differing degrees of things, and unless everything is just static, you're always going to have degrees, and one can be judged better than the other by whatever subjective standard you want.
Comfort.
The problem of evil, when it's presented by free-thinking people, is not, hey, why is there good and evil? Why is there bad things happening? It's why is there seemingly unnecessary, excessive suffering that appears to serve no purpose.
Yeah, tsunamis and hurricanes and Ebola and all that. Right.
In the presumptive role that Christianity, for example, would place God and God's plan and the meaning and purpose and value of life, etc., that role is one that seems to be in conflict, or it seems unnecessary to have the suffering that we see, to the extent we see it. I'm not a big fan of the problem of evil argument. I think it opens way too many little doors and windows for people to, well, yeah, but what about this, and what about that, and what about this? All I care about, tell me what you believe and why, and either you have a good reason or you don't. Do you have evidence for it? Saying, well, if there's a God, why is there suffering? Even saying it in a proper way.
Hats off to Epicurus for thinking of that. Long before Jesus was even thought of, right? So it's an old conundrum, and it's a goodie.
You mean Euthyphro?
No, it was.
Yeah, Epicurus came up.
Oh, Epicurus on the problem of evil. I'm thinking of Euthyphro. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so hats off to the man. He's a hero, no doubt.
But it's only a problem for certain specific ideas about God in the first place, which is, when you talk to, you haven't gained any ground. It's like if you've got an argument that demonstrates that there can't be a God that is both a square and a circle, you haven't gained any ground because you haven't covered God in any kind of broad sense. You've covered one very narrow definition. And in the case of the problem of evil, you're addressing a God that is necessarily omniscient, omnibenevolent, and omnipresent, or at least omnipotent in the sense that they could take action. Well, okay, and I realize that those are words that a lot of people use to describe their God, but you haven't, by eliminating that and showing the contradiction there, you really haven't gained a whole lot of ground.
Well, I think the reason you don't gain ground is it's an intellectual argument, and people, I think, believe religions for emotional reasons, largely. And so I see this a lot where atheists are sort of talking past the Christians, or the believers, because they believe because it feels good, or they're going to get some reward, or it's satisfying, or these sorts of things. And we're hitting the intellectual, nail on the head. And we're missing the thing that really matters to them, right? Mm-hmm.